I used to think that the worst kind of silence was the one that followed a slammed door. Or maybe the kind that hangs in the air after a heated argument. But I was wrong. The worst silence is digital. It's the one that stares back at you through a black screen. No typing bubble. No scene checkmark. No reply. Just nothing. My son blocked me 6 months ago. No message. No warning. Just disappeared from my phone, my inbox, my life. One day I was still dad, the next I was no one. Just a man looking at a silent phone, hoping for something that never came. It wasn't just the act of being blocked. It was what came before that hurt the most. He sat across from me, eyes tired but clear. He had just come back from a session with his therapist. And that's when he said it. "You were a toxic trait of my childhood, Dad." That sentence didn't come from nowhere. I'm sure he rehearsed it, maybe even wrote it down. Maybe the therapist told him it was time to say it. And I guess it was. But hearing it? From the boy I raised, the boy I worked for, worried about, prayed for? It shattered something in me. I wasn't perfect. God knows I wasn't. But I didn't think I was that. And now. Silence. A silence so loud it rings in my ears at night. I still remember the way he used to line up his toy cars in the hallway. He couldn't have been more than 3. He'd set them all up, red, blue, yellow, and give each one a name. Then he'd look up at me with those big eyes and say, "Daddy, watch." And I did. I watched him push those little cars along the floor like it was the most important job in the world. And to him, it was. That hallway felt like magic back then. Like time slowed down for just a minute so I could sit beside my son and pretend we had forever. But the truth is, I was already rushing. Rushing to get ready for work, to pay the bills, to be the man of the house. I'd ruffle his hair, smile, maybe watch him for 5 minutes, but never long enough. Not really. Sometimes I wonder if he remembers those moments. If he remembers the cars. Or the way I always stood up too soon. He used to call me his best friend. He'd say, "You're my hero, Daddy." And I believed him. God, I miss being someone's hero. Now, looking back, I ask myself, was I really there for him? Or was I just present in the room, thinking about everything else but him? He was just a little boy with a toy car in his hand. And I was a grown man holding too much pride and not enough patience. I didn't know then how quickly toy cars turn into closed doors and long silences. I didn't grow up in a house where people said "I love you." We showed it, by keeping the lights on, putting food on the table, fixing things when they broke. That's what love looked like to me. Responsibility. Sacrifice. So when I became a father, I did what I knew. I worked. Long hours. Double shifts. Holidays, sometimes. I wanted to give him everything I didn't have growing up. A roof he could count on. A fridge that was always full. Clean clothes. A safe neighborhood. But I see now that he wanted something else, something simpler. He wanted me. He didn't understand why I came home late, why I was always tired. To him, I was choosing work over him. But I wasn't. I was working for him. I remember once he left a drawing on my nightstand. It was just a stick figure version of me and him, holding hands. Underneath, in shaky little letters, he wrote, "Me and Daddy." I found it after getting home past midnight. He was already asleep. I stared at it for a long time. Then I tucked it into my wallet and went to bed. I carried that drawing around for years. It got wrinkled, torn at the corners, but I couldn't throw it away. That piece of paper felt like a quiet kind of forgiveness. But now, with everything that's happened, I wonder, was it also a quiet kind of plea? A child asking, "Where are you?" And a father answering, "I'm doing this for you." But maybe that wasn't the answer he needed. I prided myself on never letting my family go without. There was always food in the fridge. The bills were paid on time. The heat worked in the winter. I thought that made me a good father. But now I'm starting to see the difference between providing and being present. I was there, physically. I came home every night. I ate dinner at the table when I could. I helped fix broken bikes and checked the locks before bed. But emotionally? I don't know. I think I was always somewhere else. Tired. Distracted. Frustrated. Watching the clock. Thinking about money. Thinking about everything except what was right in front of me. He used to ask me to play. To read him bedtime stories. Sometimes I did. Sometimes I said, "Not tonight, buddy. Daddy's tired." I told myself I'd make it up to him on the weekend. Or during vacation. But those moments don't come back around. Not the same way. Kids don't measure love in dollars. They measure it in attention. And maybe that's where I failed. He never went hungry. But now I wonder if his heart did. If he went to sleep with full pockets and an empty chest, wondering why his dad felt so far away even from across the dinner table. I can still see the way he looked at me when I didn't notice he was speaking. The way his voice got quieter each time I half listened. I thought I was building a strong foundation for him. But maybe I was just building a house where he didn't feel seen. I never hit him. Not once. And for the longest time, I used that as proof that I was a good father. But I've come to learn that words, certain words, can bruise just as deep as any belt or fist. I said things I regret. Not because I didn't love him, but because I was tired, stressed, and carrying weights I didn't know how to set down. Sometimes, he'd spill something or break something or just act like a kid. And I'd snap. "What's wrong with you? Why can't you just listen for once? You're making my life harder than it already is." I told myself those were just moments. That he'd forget them. That all kids hear stuff like that sometimes. But now I realize, he didn't forget. He collected those words like stones. And over time, they weighed him down in ways I never saw. It breaks me to think that my voice, the same voice that once sang him to sleep, might be the one that echoes when he doubts himself. When he thinks he's not enough. I wish I had known that a father's words become a child's inner voice. I wish I had stopped myself. Taken a breath. Kneeled down to his level and said, "I'm sorry." Because even if I didn't mean to hurt him, I did. And now those old, careless words come back to haunt me, not through my own memory, but through his silence. By the time he hit 13, it felt like he was already packing bags in his mind. He was still under my roof, still sitting at the same dinner table. But the distance between us had grown into something cold. We talked less. Or maybe we just stopped listening. He started closing his bedroom door. Locking it sometimes. And when I knocked, he'd answer with one-word replies, like I was a stranger trying to sell him something. I blamed it on teenage hormones. That's what fathers tell themselves. It's just a phase. He'll come around. But deep down, I knew better. He was slipping away. And I didn't know how to stop it, how to reach him without sounding like I was lecturing, or judging, or digging into things I hadn't earned the right to ask about. I tried small things. Inviting him to watch a game with me. Offering to drive him to school just to have 10 minutes together. Sometimes he said yes. But mostly, he said he had homework or wasn't in the mood. One night I stood outside his room, hand hovering over the doorknob, and I heard him laughing, really laughing, with his friends online. I hadn't heard him laugh like that with me in years. That laugh should have made me smile. But instead, it made my chest ache. Because I realized. The version of him that was open, playful, warm, he was still in there. Just not with me. And I started to understand, my son was still growing. But he was growing away from me. And I was letting it happen. Not out of apathy, but out of fear. Fear that maybe he didn't want me close anymore. Or worse. That maybe I hadn't earned the right to stay close at all. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't even a fight. It was just a quiet sentence, spoken on a tired afternoon, as if it had been waiting years to be said. We were in the kitchen. He was home from college for the weekend. I thought things were going okay. We were making small talk, nothing deep, nothing emotional. And then he looked at me. Really looked at me. And said, "You hurt me, Dad." Just like that. Calm. Steady. No anger. No tears. It hit me like a punch to the chest. I asked him what he meant, but even as the words came out of my mouth, I already knew. I saw it in his face, the years of silence, the buried pain, the child still living behind his grown-up eyes. He didn't yell. He didn't list every moment I failed him. He didn't need to. Just saying it, "You hurt me," was enough. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to say, "I did my best," or "I was under so much pressure," or "You have no idea what I went through." But I didn't. Because none of that would have changed how he felt. And it wouldn't have healed what I broke. So I just stood there, in the kitchen where I used to make his school lunches, listening to my grown son tell me that I caused him pain. I wish I could tell you I said the perfect thing. That I reached across the table and made it right. But the truth is, I froze. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. There is no rewind button for parenthood. Only reflection. And sometimes, regret. I didn't expect to be invited. When my son told me he was in therapy, I was surprised, proud, even. I thought, good for him, taking care of his mind. What I didn't expect was for him to say, "She wants to meet you." I showed up. Nervous. Uncertain. A little defensive, if I'm honest. She was kind. Calm. The room smelled like lavender, And there were tissues on the table, just in case. I remember thinking, I won't need those. I was wrong about that, too. My son sat next to me, not across. That gave me hope. But the conversation. It wasn't easy. She asked about his childhood. About our relationship. About things I didn't think he remembered. And then she turned to me, gently, and said, "Do you know how your son describes you when he talks about his childhood?" I held my breath. She continued. "He says you were a presence he was afraid to disturb. He says your love felt like something he had to earn." I felt like I'd been cracked open. Not attacked, just exposed. And then she said it. The phrase I'll never forget. In his healing journey, you've become what we call a toxic imprint. A pattern he's trying not to repeat. I sat there, stunned. Me? A toxic imprint? I thought toxic parents were violent, cruel, absent. I thought I was doing everything right by being there, paying the bills, keeping him safe. But I hadn't kept him whole. The therapist wasn't blaming me. She was trying to open a door. But I didn't walk through it. Not that day. I nodded. I listened. I even said I understood. But inside, I was crumbling. It's hard to realize that the love you gave might have left scars. That you did your best. And it still wasn't what your child needed. It didn't come during the therapy session. It came later, on the phone. He called me one evening, his voice quiet, like he had something rehearsed. I sat on the edge of my bed, not knowing that the next few seconds would leave a mark I'd carry for the rest of my life. "Dad," he said, "my therapist helped me see that. You were a toxic trait of my childhood." That sentence didn't feel like a slap. It felt like a funeral bell. Like something sacred had died between us, and he was just letting me know it was buried. I didn't speak right away. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. How do you respond to your own child telling you that your presence, your voice, your rules, your love, even, had poisoned the very years that were supposed to feel safe? I wanted to say it wasn't true. That he misunderstood me. That he was being too harsh. That I was trying. Always trying. But deep down, I knew this wasn't about blame. It was about impact. And if his experience of me was that I had harmed him, even unknowingly, then arguing wouldn't erase that pain. It would only prove his point. So I said the only words I could find. "I'm sorry you feel that way." But even as I said them, I hated the way they sounded. Detached. Cold. Like I was trying to dodge the weight of his truth. I wish I had said, "Tell me more. Help me understand." I wish I had been brave enough to let his pain in. But instead, I just sat there, with the phone warm in my hand, and my son's voice fading into a silence I didn't know how to fill. It didn't happen right away. After that phone call, we still exchanged a few messages. Polite. Distant. Careful. Like walking across a frozen lake, not knowing where the cracks were. Then one day, I sent a text, something simple, like "Hope you're doing okay." And it didn't go through. I thought maybe his phone was off. So I called. Straight to voicemail. I tried again the next day. And the day after that. Eventually, I realized. He had blocked me. Blocked me. Like I was a telemarketer. Like I was someone he needed to protect himself from. I stared at the screen for a long time. Refreshed the message thread. Tried different apps. Nothing. I even emailed him. I poured my heart out. No reply. There's a unique kind of pain in knowing your child chose to erase your voice from their world. Not because you forgot to show up. But because you did, and they remember how it felt. I checked his social media, just to see if he was okay. And I noticed something that stopped me cold. He had posted a quote. "Healing sometimes means cutting off the source of the wound." And just like that, I knew. He wasn't just angry. He was protecting himself, from me. No yelling. No goodbye. Just a quiet exit. One day I was his father. The next, I was a chapter he closed for his own survival. And now? Now I'm just a man staring at a silent phone, trying to remember when exactly it all began to go wrong. When he said I was toxic, my first instinct was to push it away. That's not fair. He's being too sensitive. I gave him everything. I clung to those thoughts like a life raft. Because facing the truth? That meant admitting I'd failed at the one job that mattered most to me. So I told myself stories. That it was the therapist's fault, planting ideas in his head. That he'd come around when he had kids of his own. That one day he'd realize how much I did for him, and how hard life really was. I even started writing letters to him. Not to send, just to get it all out. Page after page of explanations, justifications, excuses. I wanted to make him understand the pressure I was under. The sacrifices I made. The pain I carried from my own father, and how I thought I was doing better. But somewhere along the way, I stopped writing to him. And started writing about myself. About the guilt I couldn't shake. The shame that crept in at night. The memories I thought were harmless, but now looked different through his eyes. I remembered a time he came home crying from school. I told him to toughen up. Back then, I thought I was teaching him strength. Now, I wonder if I was just teaching him silence. I denied it all at first. Then I tried to explain it away. And now, I sit with it. The truth that I might have wounded the person I loved most. Not with cruelty. Not with intention. But with absence. With words I didn't think twice about. With love that didn't always feel like love to him. And no amount of explanation can undo that. Some nights, I lie awake staring at the ceiling, replaying moments I didn't even know mattered. Like the time I told him to man up when he was scared. Or when I laughed off his tears like they were weakness. Or when I told him I was too busy, again, and missed his school play. At the time, I thought I was teaching him resilience. But now I wonder if I was just teaching him to hide his pain from me. That guilt, it doesn't fade. It waits for me in the quiet hours, when the world slows down and there's no one left to convince. Not even myself. I don't know how many years I have left. But I do know that not a single day passes without thinking of him. Of what I would say, if I had the chance. It's strange how the heart works. Even after all the distance, the silence, the blocking. My love for him hasn't changed. It's still there. Strong. Raw. Constant. I don't need him to forget. I don't need him to pretend nothing happened. I just want him to know, I see it now. I hear him. I believe him. And more than anything, I love him. Not the perfect version of him. Not the version I imagined he'd be. I love him, as he is. Even if he needs space. Even if he never speaks to me again. That love doesn't go away. It just sits quietly, like a light left on by the door. In case he ever decides to come home. There's so much I never said to him. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know how. I grew up in a house where emotions were swallowed, not shared. Where crying made you weak, and silence was safer than honesty. My father didn't say, "I love you." He showed it by working 2 jobs and coming home too tired to talk. So I copied what I saw. And I wish my son knew. I was learning as I went. I wish he knew how many nights I sat in the driveway before walking through the door, trying to figure out how to be the man he needed, and feeling like I always fell short. I wish he knew I wasn't angry at him when I raised my voice. I was angry at life. At myself. At the pressure I felt to carry it all without showing a crack. I wish he knew how proud I am, of the man he's become. Even if I'm not part of his life anymore. Even if I watch from a distance. And I wish, more than anything, that he knew how often I think of the little boy with wide eyes and toy cars, the one who used to reach for my hand, and how I'd give anything to hold it again, just once more. I wasn't always right. I wasn't always kind. But I was always trying. Even when it didn't look like it. And if he ever wonders who he was to me, he was everything. If I had just one more conversation with my son, no defenses, no tension, no walls, I know exactly what I'd say. I wouldn't start by explaining myself. I wouldn't talk about how hard life was for me, or what I meant to do, or how I thought I was doing the right thing. I'd start with this: I'm sorry. Not the kind of sorry that asks for anything in return. Just a real, quiet, human sorry. I'm sorry for the moments I wasn't there the way you needed. I'm sorry for the words I didn't think would stay with you forever. I'm sorry I made you feel small when you needed to feel safe. Then I'd tell him the truth. That I love him with everything I've got. That I've never stopped. Then it doesn't matter how many years pass, or how far apart we are, or how much hurt sits between us. My love doesn't come with conditions. It doesn't need agreement. It just is. I'd tell him I'm proud of his strength, for setting boundaries, for healing, even if that healing meant letting go of me. And I'd say, if the door ever cracks open, even a little, I'll be here. No questions. No guilt. Just love. Because in the end, that's what I needed him to feel all along. Not my stress. Not my disappointment. Not my pride. Just my love. There's a certain clarity that only comes when it's too late to do anything with it. I've learned more about fatherhood in the silence of my son's absence than I ever did during the years I was trying to raise him. I've learned that being there doesn't always mean being present. That kids remember tone more than they remember rules. That love, when not expressed, can feel like rejection, even when it was meant to protect. I used to think that providing for my family was enough. That if I gave him a home, clothes, an education, I was doing my job. But I've learned that children don't just need shelter. They need safe places inside people. I've learned that apology isn't weakness. It's love, matured. And waiting until you're right before you say I'm sorry? That's just another way of protecting your ego instead of your child. I've learned that even good intentions can cast long shadows. That doing your best doesn't always protect others from harm. But maybe the hardest lesson of all? That time doesn't always give second chances. And silence can be forever. Still, I carry these lessons. Not because they fix anything. But because they mean something. They are the proof that I've changed. Even if he never sees it. Even if he never wants to. And if all I can do now is be better for the people still in my life, then I owe him that. Because my greatest failure as a father has become the most painful, necessary teacher of my life. If by some miracle my son is listening to this, I just want you to know. I was wrong about so many things. I was too proud, too busy, too afraid to admit I didn't have all the answers. But one thing I never got wrong, was how much I love you. If you never speak to me again, if I remain just a ghost from your childhood, I want you to know, I loved you then. I love you now. And I'll love you for the rest of my life. You didn't break me by walking away. You woke me up. And I hope that wherever you are, you've found peace. You've found healing. You've found the kind of father in yourself that I wish I had been for you. To anyone watching this who's ever made mistakes with their kids, you're not alone. You're not beyond redemption. But don't wait for silence to teach you what love could have shown you. Say it now. Apologize now. Be the one to knock on the door. Even if you're not sure it'll open. And if this story touched you in any way, please, leave a comment below. Let me know if you've lived something like this. Maybe your child won't hear you, but someone else will, and sometimes, that's the first step toward healing. Click the like button if this moved you, and please, subscribe to the channel. We're telling real stories here, stories that might feel like yours. And if this video helps even one person feel less alone, then it was worth every word.